Union of European Federalists. The International Day of Democracy is celebrated every year all over the world on September 15th. It was established in 2007 by the UN General Assembly and aims to encourage especially governments and parliaments to raise awareness about the state of democracy and democratic principles. Each year highlights a specific theme like strengthening the voices of citizens, inclusiveness or dialogue. Mr. GOZI, as UEF President and MEP, you have deep insight into different aspects of democratic life, from the ways of practical politics over the mechanics of the public discourse up to what drives civic engagement. We have prepared 3 questions for you to share your expertise on the occasion of today's Democracy Day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, the first question concerns the current state of democracy in Europe. During the last few years, and especially due to the COVID-19 crisis, democracy faced major challenges all over the globe. Also in Europe, democracy seems to be backsliding. Civic space is shrinking, distrust, mis- and disinformation are growing, while the freedom of journalists and media is endangered. We are constantly reminded that our democratic principles are under threat. How would you assess the current state of democracy in Europe?
Well, the first point is that democracy cannot never be taken for granted. You always have to struggle. You always have to commit. You always have, as a citizens, to engage, to defend democracy, to promote democracy, and also to see democracy growing. And this is what we have to do also inside the European Union. And it is clear that this is a very difficult period for democracy in the European Union, for the reason that you've said. On one side, because the democracy is facing new challenges, which can be both opportunities and threats. And the issue of disinformation through the social media is certainly one of these threats. But it's also the social media can help a lot the democratic debate, can help a lot citizen participation, but they can help a lot also manipulation of the public opinion, interference in our democratic processes from foreign powers, spread of false information, spread of misinformation. That means information scientifically spread in order to make people believe something, or manipulation of data, which are real data, to manipulate the public opinion. I mean, disinformation is one thing, misinformation is another thing, but all this is certainly a major threat inside the European Union. And also there are a growing threat and violation of the rule of law and fundamental rights in the European countries. So these are threats. On the other side, the fact that, and we will come back probably on with other questions, the fact that, I mean, we talk so much about democracy, that we do so much about democracy. We want to change the European electoral law, we want to develop new plans, we are adopting new laws, what we call them regulation, but new European laws that concern European political parties, European political foundation, political advertising. This means that the European Union is fully aware that must strengthen its own democracy. And this is also something which I would say, this awareness is a very good point.
Yeah, you raised a lot of topics that make this year's Democracy Day topic really makes a lot of sense to put it in the center of attention. It is actually media freedom, because the importance of media freedom to democracy and peace can't be overestimated. Free, independent and pluralistic media are the key ingredients to democracy, and they enable the public to make informed decisions and hold governments to account. But around the world, press freedom declines, journalists are threatened, with a grave impact on human rights or democracy. UNESCO has reported that 85% of the world's population experienced a decline in press freedom in their country in the last 5 years. So let's come to some concrete visionary decisions, perhaps. What does the EU do to secure press freedom in Europe, and how to keep those forces under control who really want to undermine and manipulate an open public discourse in Europe?
Well, it's already very important that the United Nations is so committed on democracy with the International Day of Democracy. And it's also very important that at UN level, we point out the need to protect one of our fundamental freedoms, we did the freedom of media, because without freedom of media, there isn't freedom of thought, there isn't freedom of speech, there isn't a well-functioning democracy. In Europe, we got different tools to protect media freedom. We got market tool, economic tool, and institutional tool. Market tool, because it is clear that we cannot allow oligopoly in media. We cannot allow too much concentration of media power in the hand of one person, in the hand of one firm. And this plurality in the market and this, need to avoid too strong concentration, which is one of the objectives of our action when it comes to competition policy, when it comes to internal market policy, it is already very important, because very much media freedom also depends on media ownership. Certainly, we would like to do more. Certainly, we can even use more the instrument that we have, but the commitment to ensure to fight against monopoly, to fight against oligopoly in the ownership of media, it is something which is very important in the European Union. And this is the, let's say, the single market economic competition part. Then there is a new awareness, because there is a new need to come up also with the action plan specifically devoted to the functioning of democracy, beyond the issue of ownership and beyond the economic dimension of media. And this is why, I am very pleased that the Vice President Vera Jourova has developed an action plan for democracy, where clearly we identify the independence of media, but also the training of journalists and the protection of journalists' rights within the Union and outside the Union as one of the major objectives of the European Union. Of course, the European Union cannot do everything. Many things rely on the decision of the member state, because there is an issue of competence, and many issues related to media freedom belong to the member state. But the fact to launch an action plan, to provide journalists with support, to provide journalists with training, to identify media freedom as one of the priority at the heart of our action when it comes to protection of fundamental rights, protection of the rule of law. I think that this is very important, and I think that we are going toward the right direction. The more we do, in my view, within the Union, the more credible we will be also on the global scene.
Thank you so much. Now comes the third question, and it focuses on the civil engagement and the role of organizations like the UEF, because democracy requires the participation of all citizens, of course. There simply is no democracy without people. But appreciation for a democratic society is somehow not self-understanding. It's very easy for people who live in a free society to take their freedoms for granted. So where do you see the role of civil society when it comes to living the democratic principles, and how do organizations like the UEF come into play when it comes to strengthening and securing democracy?
Democracy is a multifaceted aspect, a multifaceted reality, and it cannot start and end with the vote. It is clear that the most important moment in democracy is the election, and the moment where millions of citizens are asked to vote, to choose their parliament, to choose the representative, to choose the mayor, to choose the president of the republic, and so on and so forth. But democracy doesn't start and end with the vote. On the contrary, a truly liberal democracy, a democracy based on checks and balances, so separation of power, knows perfectly that even if you got the majority, even if you got the absolute majority in the election, it's not that you can do everything you wish. There are fundamental rights, there is protection of minorities, there is protection of fundamental freedoms that must be respected even if you have won 90% in the election. And this is the first point. Second point, that democracy is, a multifaceted reality, which requires an active role of civil society, an active role of organized civil society. And this is exactly the role of the European Union, Union of European Federalists. We are active at national level and we are active at European level. We got more, if I'm not mistaken, than 30,000 members spread around different member states, and we are active in promoting some fundamental aspect of democracy. I mean, which is European democracy, which is a stronger European Union, which is a stronger role for the European Parliament, a stronger role for civil society in the democratic processes concerning the European decision, be they at local level or at European level. And we are also at the forefront of a new dimension of this reality, which is democracy, which is direct democracy, which is direct participation. This is why we have pushed a lot for the conference of the future of union to happen. I want to recall that in this conference there were 800 women and men and young, and 1/3 young people under 25 years old that have worked together for almost 1 year to debate about the future of Europe. There have been dozens of thousands of citizens which have animated a very lively debate on a dedicated online platform on the future of union. We want this to become natural part of the European democratic decision-making process. We want this to be a reality, not one-shot event, but something which in a permanent way contribute to a more lively democracy. And I think that this kind of battle, this kind of initiative, it are at the core of the mission of organizations like the European Union of European Federalists.
Thank you very much, and all the best for you and all the UEF efforts.
Thank you, all the best to you.
Union of European Federalists.